Have you noticed something interesting about the scores of NBA games recently? Before the All-Star game, we were seeing pinball numbers on a nightly basis, both from teams and individual players, and I think the fans were tuning out. Since the extra scoring was coming at the expense of competitive intensity, but more specifically putting defenders at an extreme disadvantage with foul calls on drives. There are some usual suspects we can look at and examine how they were earning their trips to the foul line before the All-Star break. Let's start with Luka Doncic, who's already notorious for his foul hunting and complaining to the refs. Before the All-Star game, he was very adept at getting his defender alongside him on his hip, then quick pulling into a shot, initiating the contact, calling out for the foul, and getting that whistle, which put him on the free throw line. After the All-Star break, we suddenly started seeing more of these types of plays where the whistle was swallowed, leaving Luka frustrated and glaring at the refs, confused as to why a move that had gotten him rewarded so often to start the season suddenly stopped being a foul. And this bears out in his free throw attempts per 100 possessions, as there's been a steep drop. But that hasn't hurt the Mavericks' overall offense, as they've seen a nice increase in their offensive rating since the break. The team that has seen a big drop in that offensive rating is the New York Knicks, and you need only look at the huge difference in foul calls on Jaylen Brunson's drives since the break. To start the season, he was drawing a foul every 14 drives to the hoop. After the break, it takes him almost 25 drives to get a foul for a massive 10 drives per foul nosedive, shaving off one free throw attempt on driving shooting fouls per game. Brunson likes to emulate James Harden from a few years ago, where he extends the ball out and lets the defense reach in and foul him across the arms. We saw plenty of instances before the All-Star break where he got a call on this move quite often. But suddenly, these types of plays were not being called for him, and they'd lead to turnovers or him on the ground wondering what the heck happened. Where you'd see him quick pull on a drive once there was some shoulder-to-chest contact between him and his defender and get the whistle, suddenly there was no sound despite similar contact in games after the All-Star break. And a similar move to try and pull up after initiating the contact with the inside shoulder, included with the wild flail of the head, is not convincing enough for the ref to make a call. And the kind of play that made fans livid was this quick pull when the defender was just running alongside. This had been an almost automatic call before the All-Star break. But now it's leaving offensive players upset and confused, and the Knicks offense cratering with the second largest offensive rating drop post-All-Star game. And there's no question that defenses are emboldened as almost 2 less calls per game are made. And I'm sure it delays the bonus and clearly has made it harder on the offenses to score. I've got a lot of stats that prove something definitely changed almost overnight, as we don't normally see the amount of foul calls drop like this in the middle of the season. And we certainly don't see offenses take a dive like this either, as normally the scoring is level or goes up as the season wears on. But I wouldn't be surprised if players are losing sleep over this. And with how frustrated they already were at the refs, I'm sure some of them might see their hair start to thin out. Well, if that's the case, they need to go to Nutrafol, a drug-free whole-body approach that promotes hair growth from within. We often blame genetics, but there are multiple things at play when it comes to hair thinning. Things like stress, nutrient gaps, and aging can all trigger hair thinning and shedding. Nutrafol's multi-targeted approach promotes hair health through whole body health. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding. Their patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sex life. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering my viewers $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code CoachNick. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and hairstylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair by clicking on the link in the description below, and you'll see why lots of players in last week's Cavs-Timberwolves game could have used Nutrafol immediately afterwards, since it went down to the wire. As Rudy Gobert gets called for a very clear loose ball foul, his 6th, he makes the money sign to the refs, indicating that they are betting on this game. The Cavs were favored by 2.5 points, so you could argue that the refs needed the Cavs to get some separation at the end of the game. None of this makes much sense considering the Cavs weren't in the bonus and wouldn't get free throws, until Natalie Seago had to call a technical foul on Rudy for such disrespect. The Cavs could have covered the spread with a last-second three-pointer, but this whole notion that the refs had money on the game is really far-fetched, and I've got a much better explanation I'll give you in a minute. But this didn't stop Rudy from doubling down in his post-game comments. First off, maybe he was just embarrassed at his own play and needed to lash out. He cold airballed 2 point-blank shots and nobody was near him on this one, yet he glances to where he thinks the referee was to complain. And the refs were generous enough not to call him for traveling before he did it again in the third. Or was he channeling the anger of his teammate Anthony Edwards, who was upset with all the contact that wasn't being called a foul for him? Allen makes clear contact on the wrist on this finish. On this one, Allen has good verticality and keeps his arms away for a good defensive play, but Edwards complains to the ref, who holds up her arms to demonstrate the defender had verticality. Ant gets surrounded and tries to step through and swing his arm into Allen's chest. This is pretty good defense, but Edwards has a point and is clearly upset. Niang is entitled to verticality, so any contact while his arms are above his head like this won't merit a whistle despite Edwards' protests. And sometimes you have to be a little skeptical of players who miss shots and then look to the refs like there should have been a foul, since this replay shows there was zero contact, he just missed the dunk. But I want you to look a little closer at something that happened on this play, because it explains a lot about what's been happening since the All-Star break. Notice how Wade has his left arm in contact with Edwards' waist. This subtle pressure on an airborne player can make a huge difference, and players try to get away with it all the time. And when pouring through thousands of clips, I noticed that during the first half of the season, defenders were not getting away with it. Referees were very good at processing what was happening with that inside hand, and despite efforts to minimize it or hide it altogether, the drivers were still getting these calls often. I found so many clips from so many different players where they get thrown off their balance with this type of contact and get free throws. And when studying post-All-Star game clips, I noticed a ton of plays where this call was not getting whistled, allowing the defense a little more freedom to pressure the drivers and influence misses near the rim. I found enough examples of this type of contact going uncalled that it's hard to believe this isn't something the refs are focusing on. After all, since it happens so much anyway, it would certainly be an easy one to cut out of your normal repertoire of foul calls if you were an NBA ref looking to keep the game flowing better and being mindful of so many outrageously high scores that had been happening. And this change was so sudden and uniform across so many games that we can't ignore this as some sort of coincidence. When asked about it, Joe Dumars answered in a very lawyerly way, but memos just got released that show the league wanted to cut down on the foul hunting by players on the way to the basket. The Lakers have been a team with a gigantic free throw disparity in their favor ever since they lost a game when LeBron James didn't get a call in Boston. And while AD and LeBron have seen a decline in fouls drawn, the number of free throws hasn't changed. But Austin Reeves' ability to get to the line has been severely hampered. To start the season, he'd routinely get near the lane and cleverly use shot fakes to get the defenders a little out of position before initiating the contact and getting the call, especially when quick pulling to catch a defender off guard with his hand in the cookie jar. But after the All-Star break, he suddenly stopped getting the benefit of the doubt as much, as the refs are letting more contact go. However, in a fascinating turn of events, the Lakers' offense has been a lot better post-All-Star break, so the change in refereeing hasn't hurt their efficiency at all. Because you're only allowed 6 fouls, getting 1 or 2 of these in the first half can severely affect the way you play defense. And it's clear that allowing a defense more leeway with legal guarding position not only eliminates the source of fans' anger, but it makes the game faster with less calls and potential reviews, and the natural byproduct is better defense and lower scores. So no, Rudy, this isn't some sort of nefarious plot by a rogue ref to manipulate games so they can win a gambling bet. This was more about the league being focused on limiting the offensive players' foul baiting, cleaning it up if you will, in an effort to get a better product on the floor. Now it's up to the players to adjust, as I'm sure they can, by cutting down on the complaining and only going to the hole when you're prepared to finish through contact.